Samuel had $47 in his bank account the night he agreed to destroy a stranger's dignity for 600 more. The job was simple. Show up to a blind date, act like an insufferable fool, make the woman leave before the appetizers arrive. He didn't ask questions. He couldn't afford to. His daughter needed school supplies. The landlord needed rent 2 months overdue. The electric company needed payment before they cut the lights again. But when Kara looked up at him from across that restaurant table, not with anger, not with tears, but with a weariness that carved straight through his chest, Samuel understood something terrible. Her reaction didn't ruin the date. It ruined him. And the choice Samuel makes next will change everything, not just for him, but for everyone he loves. If stories about second chances and unexpected connections speak to your heart, subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. Now let's go back to where it all began. 3 days earlier, Samuel sat in his pickup truck outside Poppy's elementary school, watching other parents arrive in cars that didn't rattle when they idled. His phone buzzed with another notification he couldn't bring himself to read. Probably the landlord. Possibly the hospital's billing department, still chasing the $47,000 his wife's cancer treatment had cost before she died. 2 years since Maya passed. 2 years of drowning in slow motion. He spotted Poppy emerging from the front doors, her backpack bouncing against her small frame, her braids swinging as she ran toward him. 6 years old and still believing her father could fix anything. That faith terrified him more than the debt collectors ever could. "Daddy!" She climbed into the truck and immediately noticed the dashboard. "The light's blinking again." "I know, baby girl." "Does that mean the truck is sick?" "Just tired," he said, pulling out of the parking lot. "Like everybody else." That night, after Poppy fell asleep, clutching her worn stuffed elephant, Samuel sat at the kitchen table with a calculator and a stack of bills he'd been avoiding for weeks. The math didn't change no matter how many times he ran it. Rent, $1,800. Electric, $212. The truck's transmission was making sounds that promised expensive repairs. His unemployment benefits had run out 6 weeks ago, and every job application he'd submitted disappeared into the void. He was a good electrician. 15 years of experience, but companies weren't hiring, and when they did, they wanted young guys fresh out of trade school who'd work for half the wage. His phone rang. Unknown number. "Samuel? That you?" The voice triggered a memory. A face from the job site, always smiling, always watching. "Derek? Man, it's been forever. Heard about the layoffs. That's rough, brother." Samuel didn't remember Derek ever calling him brother when they worked together. "Yeah, it's been tight. Listen, I might have something for you. Nothing permanent, just a quick job. Easy money. You free tomorrow night?" Easy money. The 2 most dangerous words in the English language. "What kind of job?" "I'll explain tomorrow. Meet me at Rosie's bar, 8 o'clock. Trust me, you'll want to hear this." The line went dead before Samuel could ask more questions. Rosie's bar smelled like cigarette smoke and broken promises. Derek was already there, nursing a beer, his smile too wide for genuine friendship. Samuel slid into the booth across from him. "Thanks for coming." Derek pushed a drink toward him. "On me." "Just tell me what this is about." Derek leaned back, enjoying the moment. "I've got a buddy who set up a blind date with this girl. Problem is he got cold feet. Already paid for the reservation at the Meridian. You know, that fancy place downtown. He needs someone to take his place." "Take his place how?" "Just show up, have dinner. But here's the thing." Derek lowered his voice. "He doesn't want the date to go well. She's been bugging him through a mutual friend, won't take no for an answer. He figures if she has one terrible experience, she'll finally back off." "So you want me to be an asshole to some random woman?" "I want you to be yourself having a bad day. Show up late, talk with your mouth full, be boring as hell. She'll leave before the main course, and you walk away with $600 cash. $600. Enough to keep the lights on. enough to make rent if he begged the landlord for another week, enough to stop Poppy from asking why the house was always dark. Who is she? Just some girl, high-maintenance type. Trust me, she'll survive one bad dinner. You'd actually be doing her a favor, teaching her to lower her standards. Everything about this felt wrong. The vagueness, Derek's too eager smile, the way he kept calling Samuel brother, like they'd ever been close. But $47 couldn't keep his daughter fed. When? Derek's grin widened. Tomorrow night, 8:30. The reservation's under the name Randy. Just show up, play the part, and the money's yours after. He slid an envelope across the table. $300 in cash. Half now, half after. We got a deal? Samuel looked at the money, thought about Poppy's face when she asked why they couldn't go to the bookstore anymore, thought about Maya, who would have never let him consider something like this. He took the envelope. The Meridian was everything Samuel expected and feared. White tablecloths, crystal glasses, waiters who moved like they were trained to be invisible. He wore his only suit, the one Maya had bought him for job interviews 7 years ago. The sleeves were slightly too short now, the shoulders slightly too tight. He felt like a trespasser. The hostess led him to a table near the window. Your date should arrive shortly, Mr. Randy. Not even his name, just another layer of the lie. He sat with his back to the wall, watching the entrance, rehearsing his performance. Be rude, be boring, make her want to leave, collect the money, go home, forget this ever happened. Then Kara walked in. She moved through the restaurant with the kind of confidence that comes from years of practice. Shoulders back, chin high, eyes straight ahead. She stood just over 4 feet tall, her achondroplasia evident in her proportions, but nothing about her posture suggested she expected pity. If anything, she walked like someone prepared for war. The other diners noticed. They always did. Some tried to hide their stares, others didn't bother. Kara ignored them all, scanning the room until her gaze landed on Samuel. She approached the table. Her eyes, sharp, assessing, moved over his face, his suit, his nervous hands. You're not Randy. It wasn't a question. Her voice was calm, almost clinical. She sat down anyway, smoothing her dress with practiced precision. Samuel's prepared script evaporated. Randy is 34, works in accounting, and has a birthmark on his left hand. My sister showed me his profile picture. She folded her hands on the table. So let me ask again. Who are you, and how much did someone pay you to sit in that chair? The directness should have thrown him. Instead, it carved something open in his chest. This woman had walked into a trap she already recognized, and instead of crying or storming out, she simply wanted the truth. $600, he heard himself say. Kara nodded slowly, as if the amount confirmed something she'd already suspected. And what were you supposed to do for that money? Make the date miserable. Make you leave. Ah. The single syllable carried the weight of 100 similar experiences. Did they tell you about... She gestured at herself. This? No. Of course not. That would have made it too obvious. She picked up the menu, studied it briefly, then set it down. Well, you're here. The reservation's paid for. You might as well tell me who sent you. Derek Wallace. Said his buddy set up the date and got cold feet. Something flickered across Kara's face. Recognition, then understanding, then a cold anger that disappeared as quickly as it came. Derek. Right. That explains a few things. You know him? I know of him. He's been pursuing my sister for months. She keeps turning him down. Kara's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. I suppose this is his creative way of sending a message. The realization hit Samuel like a physical blow. He wasn't just ruining a stranger's evening. He was a weapon in someone else's petty revenge. I didn't know, he said. I swear I didn't know any of this. I believe you. Kara's tone held no warmth, but no venom either. Just exhaustion. You have the look of a man who's been desperate enough to stop asking questions. He couldn't argue with that. The waiter approached, and Kara waved him away without looking. Then she turned her full attention back to Samuel. Let me guess your situation. Job loss, medical bills, family to support? She didn't wait for confirmation. $600 isn't enough to sell your dignity for, but it's enough to buy groceries for a month. Maybe keep the lights on. Am I close? I have a daughter. The words came out before he could stop them. She's 6. Kara's expression shifted, not softening exactly, but acknowledging something. And her mother? Cancer. 2 years ago. The silence between them grew heavy with understanding neither of them wanted. Finally, Kara spoke again. You know what's the worst part of all this? It's not the deception. It's not even the cruelty of using you to humiliate me. It's that I'm not surprised. She met his eyes directly. I've been someone's joke before, someone's pity project, someone's exotic curiosity. I stopped going on dates 3 years ago because I got tired of seeing which category I'd fall into next. My sister finally convinced me to try again. One more chance, she said. What's the worst that could happen? Her laugh was short and bitter. This is what could happen. Samuel reached into his jacket and pulled out the envelope Derek had given him. $300. Half the payment for destroying this woman's attempt at hope. He set it on the table between them. I can't do this. Kara looked at the envelope but didn't touch it. You could walk away right now with that money. I wouldn't blame you. We've both been used. That's exactly why I can't take it. He stood, picking up the envelope. $300 that could have bought Poppy new shoes, that could have kept the electricity running another month. $300 that suddenly felt heavier than all the debt he carried. For what it's worth, he said, you're not a joke. Not to me. Not after sitting across from you for 5 minutes. Kara's eyes glistened, but no tears fell. She'd probably trained herself not to cry in public years ago. What's your real name? She asked. Samuel. She nodded once, storing the information somewhere. Then she reached into her purse, pulled out enough bills to cover a meal neither of them had ordered, and stood. Take care of your daughter, Samuel. She walked out the same way she'd walked in, shoulders back, chin high, ignoring every stare. But something in her stride had changed. Something had broken, even if she'd never let it show. Samuel watched her disappear through the door. He looked down at the envelope still in his hand. Derek's money, payment for a job he refused to finish. Tomorrow he would find Derek and throw it back in his face. Tonight, he just needed to go home. He walked out into the night, the $300 burning a hole in his pocket. The apartment was dark when Samuel got home. Not because Poppy had gone to sleep, but because the electricity had finally been cut. He found her sitting on the couch with a flashlight, the beam pointed at the ceiling to create a makeshift lamp. The light stopped working, she said. I tried the switch like you showed me, but nothing happened. He sat down beside her, pulling her close. I know, baby girl, Daddy's going to fix it. How? He didn't have an answer. The next morning, Samuel drove to Derek's workplace. He found him in the parking lot, coffee in hand, that same smug smile on his face. Hey, how'd it go last night? She run out crying? Derek laughed at his own joke. Samuel pulled out the envelope and threw it at Derek's chest. Take your money. Derek's smile faltered. What the hell? You were supposed to... I know what I was supposed to do. And I know why you really wanted it done. Samuel stepped closer. Kara told me about her sister. About you. The color drained from Derek's face. You used me to hurt a woman who never did anything to you just because her sister wouldn't give you the time of day. Samuel's voice was steady, but his hands were shaking. I've done a lot of things I'm not proud of to keep my daughter fed, but I won't be your weapon." He turned and walked away, leaving Derek standing in the parking lot with $300 scattered at his feet. That night, Samuel lay awake on the couch while Poppy slept in his bed, the only room that caught the streetlight through the window. He'd given up the money. He'd walked away from the only cash he'd been offered in weeks. And for what? A moment of conscience that wouldn't pay the bills or keep his daughter warm. But every time he closed his eyes, he saw Kara's face. Not angry, not crying, just tired in a way that went bone deep. Some prices were too high, even when you couldn't afford anything else. Across town, Kara sat in her apartment surrounded by architectural blueprints and empty coffee cups. She'd built this life herself, the career, the reputation, the carefully maintained independence. Her family's money sat in trust funds she refused to touch. Every contract she'd won, every building she'd designed, proved that Kara Morrison was more than her height, more than her last name. And yet one dinner with a stranger had cracked something open. She kept replaying Samuel's words. "You're not a joke, not to me." She'd heard similar sentiments before, usually from people who wanted something, or people who thought kindness to her was a form of charity. But Samuel had looked at her like she was simply a person, not a curiosity, not a cause, just someone sitting across from him at a table. Then he'd picked up the money and walked away. That detail refused to leave her alone. $600 wasn't nothing. She'd heard the desperation beneath his measured voice, seen the worn edges of his too small suit. He needed that money, and he'd refused to earn it by hurting her. By midnight, she'd made a decision. She wasn't going to be a passive victim in someone else's revenge fantasy. She was going to find out exactly what she was dealing with. It took Kara 2 days to track down Derek Wallace. A few calls to mutual acquaintances, some careful questions that didn't reveal too much. He worked at an electrical supply company on the north side of the city, the same company that had laid off half its workforce 6 months ago, the same company where Samuel used to work. She found Derek in the parking lot during his lunch break, leaning against his car with a sandwich in one hand and his phone in the other. He looked up as she approached, and his expression cycled through surprise, confusion, and something that might have been fear. "Kara Morrison," he forced a smile. "This is unexpected." "I'm sure it is." She stopped 3 feet away, close enough to see the sweat forming on his forehead despite the cool weather. "I had an interesting dinner the other night at the Meridian. You might know something about it." Derek's smile flickered. "I don't know what you're talking about." "No?" "A man named Samuel sends his regards. He was very informative once he decided to be honest, which is more than I can say for you." The pretense crumbled. Derek's face hardened into something ugly. "Your sister should have given me a chance. I'm a good guy, better than most of the losers she's dated." "So your response to rejection was to humiliate me? To pay a desperate man to ruin my evening?" Kara kept her voice level, refusing to give him the satisfaction of seeing her angry. "That's your idea of being a good guy? You were supposed to be embarrassed. You were supposed to go crying to Lily about how terrible men are. Maybe then she'd realize." "Realize what? That you're petty and vindictive and exactly the kind of person she was right to reject?" Derek stepped forward, using his height to loom over her. It was a tactic she'd encountered countless times, men who thought physical presence was the same as power. Kara didn't move. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to stay away from my sister. You're going to stay away from me. And if I ever hear that you've pulled something like this again, with anyone, I'll make sure every person in this industry knows exactly what kind of man you are." "You think anyone's going to believe you? A woman who can't even—" "Finish that sentence." Her voice dropped to something cold and precise. "I dare you." He didn't. Kara turned and walked back to her car without another word. She didn't look back. Men like Derek didn't deserve the attention. But as she drove away, her thoughts drifted back to Samuel. He'd been Derek's weapon, chosen specifically because he was vulnerable. And instead of following through, he'd thrown the weapon away. She wondered if he was okay. She wondered if his daughter was okay. She wondered why she couldn't stop wondering. 2 weeks later, Samuel brought Poppy to the public library. It was free, air-conditioned, and full of books his daughter loved, but they couldn't afford to buy. He'd managed to get the electricity restored through a payment plan that would strangle his budget for months. But at least the lights worked again. The landlord had given him 1 more week before starting eviction proceedings. 1 week to find money he didn't have. Poppy ran straight for the children's section, her braids bouncing as she disappeared between the shelves. Samuel found a chair where he could watch her while pretending to read a newspaper someone had left behind. He heard his daughter's voice first. "Hi, what are you reading?" Then another voice, familiar, sending an electric shock through his chest. "It's a book about buildings. I designed them for my job." He stood up so fast, the chair scraped against the floor. Through the shelves, he could see Poppy crouched next to a small figure seated in a reading nook built low to the ground. Kara. She had a large architecture book open across her lap, and Poppy was leaning over her shoulder with unabashed curiosity. "You design buildings? Like whole buildings?" "Whole buildings. Sometimes houses, sometimes offices. I'm working on a library right now, actually, for kids like you." "That's so cool." Poppy's voice carried no hesitation, no awkwardness. She was looking at Kara the same way she looked at anyone interesting, with pure, uncomplicated wonder. "How come you're sitting down here? There are bigger chairs over there." Kara smiled, a real smile, nothing guarded about it. "Because this chair fits me perfectly. I'm smaller than most adults, so regular chairs are too big." Poppy considered this with 6-year-old seriousness. "Like how I can't reach the top shelf at home, so Daddy built me a step stool?" "Exactly like that." "That makes sense. I like your chair. Can I sit in the one next to you?" "Be my guest." Samuel watched his daughter settle into the low seat beside Kara, completely at ease. No staring, no uncomfortable questions about why Kara looked different. Just 2 people sharing a reading space. Then Kara looked up and saw him standing there. The smile faded into something more complicated. Recognition, uncertainty. The memory of their last conversation hanging between them like smoke. "Daddy!" Poppy waved him over. "Come meet my new friend. She designs buildings." He approached slowly, feeling like he was walking toward something he didn't deserve. "I know, baby girl. We've met." "Hello, Samuel." "Kara." Poppy looked between them with growing confusion. "You know each other? How come you never told me about the lady who designs buildings?" "It's complicated, sweetheart." But Kara was already shaking her head. "It doesn't have to be." She turned to Poppy. "Your father and I met a couple weeks ago. We had dinner together. It didn't go very well, but that wasn't his fault." "Was the food bad?" "Something like that." Poppy accepted this explanation with the easy grace of childhood. "Daddy's a good cook. He makes the best grilled cheese. Maybe you should come to our house instead." Samuel felt heat rise to his face. "Poppy, I mean it. Our kitchen works again and everything. Daddy fixed the lights." Kara's eyes met his over Poppy's head. He saw the question there. "Are you okay?" And something else beneath it. Something that might have been concern. "Can I talk to you?" he asked. "Just for a minute. Poppy, can you stay here and read?" "Only if the building lady stays, too." Kara's lips twitched. "I'll be right here. Your dad and I just need a grown-up conversation." They walked a few steps away, far enough that Poppy couldn't hear, but close enough that Samuel could still see her. "I found Derek," Kara said without preamble. "I know what he was trying to do. I know you were just a tool in his pathetic revenge scheme." "You confronted him?" "Someone had to." She crossed her arms. "He's a small man in every way that matters." "But you already knew that." Samuel shook his head slowly. "I should have asked more questions. I should have known something was wrong. You were desperate. He exploited that. It's not the same as being complicit. Kara glanced back at Poppy, who was already absorbed in a picture book. She's wonderful. Your daughter. She's the only good thing I've done. That's not true. Kara held his gaze. You could have taken the money and walked away. Most people would have. Most people haven't been looked at the way you looked at me in that restaurant. The words hung between them, honest and raw. Finally, Kara spoke again. There's a children's reading program here on Saturday afternoons. I volunteer. If Poppy wants to come... She let the sentence trail off. That's not... I wasn't... Samuel stumbled over the words. I don't want you to feel obligated. After everything... I don't feel obligated, I feel curious. She looked up at him with those sharp, assessing eyes. I want to know who you are when you're not being used as someone else's weapon. And I think Poppy deserves to have something fun to do on weekends that doesn't depend on how much money is in your bank account. It wasn't an offer of friendship. It wasn't an absolution. It was something smaller and more honest, an open door with no expectations attached. Okay, he said. Saturday. Saturdays became a ritual. Poppy loved the reading program, loved the other children, loved the patient librarians who made every story feel like an adventure. But most of all, she loved Kara, the building lady who always sat in the small chair and never treated her like a little kid. Samuel would drop Poppy off, then linger in the library's quiet corners while Kara worked with the children. Sometimes they'd talk during breaks. Small things at first. Weather, books, Poppy's latest obsession with dinosaurs, then bigger things. His years as an electrician, her path through architecture school, the way the world looked at both of them and saw something less than whole. People assume I got where I am because of my family's money, Kara told him one afternoon. They can't imagine that a woman who looks like me could succeed on her own. And did you? Every contract, every project. I've never touched my inheritance. Her jaw tightened. I needed to know I could do it myself. I needed proof that I was more than what people see. Samuel understood that hunger. He'd felt it his whole life. The need to prove he was more than another black man struggling to make ends meet, more than a statistic, more than a stereotype. The world has a lot of boxes, he said, and it really hates when we don't fit. Kara smiled at that, and something shifted in the space between them. Weeks passed, and what had started as cautious acquaintance began to feel like something more. Samuel found himself looking forward to Saturdays with an intensity that surprised him, and he wasn't the only one. Kara, too, had started arriving earlier, staying later, finding excuses to extend their conversations. The shift terrified them both. Kara had spent 3 years building walls, protecting herself from disappointment and exploitation. Now, a man she'd met through deception was taking them apart, brick by brick, and he wasn't even trying. One evening, she noticed a folded paper fall from Samuel's jacket as he reached for his phone. A past-due notice from the electric company, warning of service interruption if the payment plan wasn't maintained. She picked it up without thinking, and his face went rigid with shame. It's not... He grabbed the paper back, stuffing it into his pocket. I'm handling it. I didn't say anything. You didn't have to. He left early that day, taking Poppy with him. The little girl waved goodbye from the library door, oblivious to the tension. That night, Kara sat alone in her apartment and faced the truth she'd been avoiding. She was developing feelings for a man who was drowning in debt, a man who didn't know her family could solve his problems with pocket change, a man who would probably hate her if he found out. And beneath that fear was another one, older and more familiar. What if he's only interested because he senses the money? What if I'm being played again? She hated that the thought even crossed her mind. But she'd been fooled before. The wealthy woman with the unusual body, a target for men who saw dollar signs and assumed she'd be grateful for any attention. Samuel wasn't like that. She knew it in her bones. But knowing something and believing it were different things. Samuel's own fears grew in parallel. He'd started to recognize the way his heart lifted when he saw Kara sitting in her small chair, the way her laugh made the library feel warmer. He'd started to imagine futures he had no right to imagine. Then he saw the article. He was killing time at the library, scrolling through news on his phone, when the headline caught his eye. Morrison family donates $2 million to Children's Hospital. Below it, a photo of Kara standing with her parents at some gala. Elegant dress, practiced smile, surrounded by wealth he couldn't comprehend. Morrison, as in Morrison Development, as in one of the richest families in the state. The phone nearly slipped from his fingers. Everything he thought he knew about Kara rearranged itself into something unrecognizable. She wasn't just an architect who designed buildings. She was an heiress who'd chosen to work. Her independence wasn't about survival, it was about principle. She had never needed anything from anyone, least of all him. And here he was, a broke electrician who couldn't even keep his lights on, thinking he had something to offer her. The shame was absolute. He stopped coming to the library, stopped responding to Kara's texts, made excuses to Poppy about why they couldn't go to the reading program anymore. "But I miss Kara," Poppy said, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Why can't we see her?" "She's busy, baby girl. Important people have important things to do." "She's not important. She's just Kara." He didn't know how to explain that those were the same thing now. Kara waited 2 weeks before she acted. 2 weeks of silence, of unanswered messages, of Poppy's absence from the reading program. 2 weeks of asking herself whether this was the universe protecting her from another mistake. But Poppy's face kept appearing in her mind, that curious, open smile. The way she'd asked about Kara's height, like it was the most natural question in the world. The way she'd made Kara feel for the first time in years, like she belonged somewhere. She got Samuel's address from the library registration files. She drove to his neighborhood as the sun was setting, past liquor stores and pawn shops and apartment buildings with bars on the windows, the kind of neighborhood that reminded people to lock their doors. The building was old, the stairs narrow. She climbed to the 3rd floor and knocked on apartment 3B. Samuel opened the door. He looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes, stubble on his jaw, the worn look of a man fighting battles he kept losing. "Kara." Her name came out like a wound. "You've been avoiding me." "I've been busy." "Don't lie." She stepped closer, forcing him to look at her. "I know you saw the article. I know you found out about my family. And I know that's why you disappeared." His jaw tightened. "You should have told me." "Would it have changed anything?" "It changes everything." He stepped back, gesturing at the cramped apartment behind him, the water-stained ceiling, the second-hand furniture, the toys scattered across a worn carpet. "Look at where I live, Kara. Look at who I am. I'm an unemployed black man with $47,000 in medical debt, living in an apartment I'm about to get evicted from. I took money to humiliate you, and you're—" "I'm what?" Her voice sharpened. "Rich? Is that supposed to matter?" "It matters because you have options. You could be with anyone. Someone who doesn't need to check his bank account before buying groceries. Someone who fits into your world." "My world." Kara let out a bitter laugh. "You mean the world where people smile at me at galas and whisper behind my back? Where men ask me out because they think I'll be grateful? Where everyone assumes I got everything handed to me because they can't imagine a woman who looks like me earning anything?" She moved forward until she was standing in his doorway. "You want to know why I volunteer at that library? Because children are the only people who look at me and see a person. Not a curiosity, not a checkbook, just me." He was silent. Poppy looked at me like that. She asked why I was designed differently, like it was no more remarkable than having curly hair. "And you—" Her voice cracked slightly. "You looked at me across that restaurant table and said I wasn't a joke. Do you know how long it's been since someone said something like that and meant it? Samuel's shoulders sagged. The fight drained out of him, leaving only raw exhaustion. I don't know how to do this, he admitted. I don't know how to stand next to you without feeling like I'm taking something I don't deserve. You don't get to decide that for both of us. Kara's eyes blazed. You don't get to make yourself small because you're scared. I've spent my whole life watching people count me out because of how I look. I won't let you do the same thing to yourself. She turned toward the stairs. Halfway down, she stopped. Poppy asked about you. She asked if you were okay, if she'd done something wrong. She didn't look back. That little girl loves you more than anything in the world. And you're teaching her that when things get hard, you run. She descended the rest of the stairs and walked out into the fading light. Samuel stood in his doorway for a long time, staring at the space where she'd been. 3 days after Kara walked out of his building, Poppy woke up burning with fever. Samuel tried everything. Cold compresses, children's medicine from the half-empty bottle in the bathroom cabinet, prayers to a God he wasn't sure he believed in anymore. But by midnight, her temperature had climbed to 104 degrees, and her small body began to shake with tremors that looked too much like seizures. He wrapped her in a blanket and drove to the emergency room with his hazard lights flashing, running every red light between his apartment and St. Michael's Hospital. The waiting room was crowded with the usual late-night desperation: crying babies, homeless men seeking shelter, a teenager with a bloody hand wrapped in a fast food napkin. The triage nurse took one look at Poppy and rushed them to the back. "Do you have insurance?" someone asked while doctors worked over his daughter's small frame. "No. We'll need a deposit before—" "I don't care. Just help her. Please." They helped her. The law required it, even when the patient's father couldn't afford it. But Samuel saw the way the billing coordinator looked at him when they stabilized Poppy 3 hours later. The practiced sympathy that couldn't quite hide the calculation happening behind her eyes. Another bill he couldn't pay. Another debt that would follow him like a shadow. But Poppy was breathing. Poppy was stable. That was all that mattered. She woke up near dawn, her eyes fluttering open to find her father slumped in the chair beside her bed. The IV in her arm made her whimper, and Samuel was at her side instantly. "Hey, baby girl, I'm here. Daddy's right here. My arm hurts. I know. The doctors are giving you medicine to make you feel better. You just need to rest." She looked around the room, the beeping monitors, the harsh fluorescent lights, the curtain that separated them from another patient. Then she looked back at him with eyes that seemed too old for 6 years. "Daddy, is Kara going to come visit me?" The question hit him like a physical blow. Of all the things his daughter could ask, why she was sick when she could go home, whether she was going to be okay, she asked about the woman he'd pushed away. "I don't know, sweetheart." "Can you call her? I want to tell her about the dinosaur book I found. She'd like it. It has pictures of buildings that dinosaurs could live in. That does sound like something she'd enjoy." "So will you call her?" He didn't answer. He just held his daughter's hand until she fell back asleep. The nurse who came to check Poppy's vitals at 7 in the morning was a black woman in her 60s, with gray hair pulled back in a neat bun and the kind of weathered face that suggested she'd seen everything life had to offer. She worked quietly, checking readings and adjusting the IV drip, but her eyes kept drifting to Samuel. "You look like you haven't slept in days," she said finally. "I haven't slept well in years." She nodded as if this made perfect sense. "Your daughter's going to be fine. It was a febrile seizure. Scary as hell, but usually harmless. Kids grow out of them." "Thank you. But that's not what's eating at you, is it?" Samuel looked up, startled by the directness. The nurse was studying him with an expression that reminded him of his grandmother, part compassion, part judgment, all truth. "I've been doing this job for 38 years, she said. "I've seen that look on a lot of men's faces. The one that says, "I'm not enough." He couldn't think of anything to say. My father had that same look. She pulled up a chair and sat down beside him. Good man, hard worker. Loved my mother more than anything. But he convinced himself she deserved better than a man who worked double shifts and still couldn't afford to buy her nice things. So one day he left, thought he was doing her a favor. What happened? She spent the rest of her life wondering what she did wrong, and he spent the rest of his life being miserable somewhere else. The nurse leaned forward. The thing about convincing yourself you're not good enough, it doesn't just hurt you. It hurts everyone who loves you. And it doesn't make you noble. It makes you a coward. The words landed like stones dropped into still water. Your daughter asked about someone earlier. Kara, right? The way her face lit up when she said that name. The nurse stood and smoothed her scrubs. Whatever you think you're protecting her from, it's not as bad as losing someone she loves because her father was too scared to try. She left to check on other patients. Samuel sat alone, staring at his daughter's sleeping face. He thought about Maya, who had fought for every single day of life, even when the cancer was winning, who had never once given up on him, on them, on the family they were building. He thought about Kara, who had looked at his shame and his fear and his too small apartment and said, "You don't get to decide that for both of us." He thought about Poppy, who just wanted to tell someone about a dinosaur book. The nurses had told him Poppy would be in observation for at least another day. He had time, not much, but enough. He made a phone call, found an address, and left the hospital with a promise to return before his daughter woke up. Kara's architecture studio was on the 4th floor of a converted warehouse downtown. The building was all exposed brick and oversized windows, the kind of place that screamed creative professional without saying it out loud. She was alone when he arrived, bent over a drafting table covered with blueprints. The late afternoon light caught the concentration on her face as she made precise marks with a mechanical pencil. She looked up when he knocked on the open door. Her expression cycled through surprise, wariness, and something he couldn't quite name. Samuel. I'm not here to ask for anything. He stayed in the doorway, giving her space. I just need you to listen. That's all. She set down her pencil and folded her hands on the table, waiting. I've spent the last few days running the same argument in my head. All the reasons why I'm not enough. Not enough money, not enough status, not enough anything. And every time I thought about coming to see you, that voice would get louder. He took a breath. But Poppy got sick last night. She's okay. The doctors say she'll be fine. But she woke up in a hospital bed with needles in her arm, and the first thing she asked was whether you were going to visit her. Kara's composure cracked slightly. Is she? She's stable. She's resting. But that's not the point. He stepped into the room. The point is that my daughter has lost her mother. She's living in an apartment that might get taken away from us. Her father can barely keep the lights on. And in the middle of all that, the person she wants to see is you. Kara was silent. I don't know what I can give you. I don't even know what tomorrow looks like. But I know that I'm tired of running. I'm tired of convincing myself I don't deserve good things. I'm tired of teaching my daughter that when life gets hard, you disappear. His voice steadied. So I'm here. I'm not asking you to fix my problems or save me from anything. I'm just asking if you'll let me stay. Let me show up. Let me try. The silence stretched between them, filled with everything that had happened since that first disastrous dinner. Finally, Kara spoke. What hospital? St. Michael's, room 214. She stood, reaching for her jacket on the back of her chair. Then let's go. I want to hear about that dinosaur book. Poppy's face when Kara walked into her hospital room was worth every moment of doubt and fear that had led to this point. Kara! She tried to sit up, and both adults rushed to steady her. You came? Daddy said he didn't know if you would, but I knew. I knew you'd come. Of course I came. Kara pulled a chair close to the bed and sat at Poppy's level. Your dad told me you found a book about dinosaur buildings? Yes, it's so cool. There's this one building shaped like a T-Rex, and it has windows for eyes, and I thought you could design something like that. Maybe a library where dinosaurs could read books. A library for dinosaurs. That's a brilliant idea. We should sketch it out together when you're feeling better. Samuel watched them talk. His daughter animated despite the IV in her arm, Kara listening with genuine interest. Two people who had found each other through the strangest circumstances, now connected by something that felt almost like family. The hospital bill arrived a week later. Kara didn't offer to pay it. Instead, she handed him a different piece of paper, information about a medical assistance program for unemployed workers, funded by a coalition of local businesses, including her architecture firm. He qualified. The application took 2 hours to fill out. 3 weeks later, the bill was reduced by 80%. She also introduced him to the owner of a construction company who needed an experienced electrician, not charity. They were legitimately short-staffed, and Samuel's references were solid. He interviewed on a Tuesday and started work the following Monday. When Kara finally introduced Samuel to her sister Lily, it happened at the library, neutral ground where both of them felt comfortable. Lily was cautious at first, remembering only that her sister's blind date had involved some kind of deception. But watching Samuel with Poppy, seeing the way he looked at Kara, not with hunger or calculation, but with something quieter and more genuine, she began to understand. He seems different than I expected, Lily admitted later, as Poppy showed her a crayon drawing of a dinosaur library. He is, Kara replied. Kara's parents took longer to come around. They didn't understand why their daughter had chosen this man, this life, when she could have had anything. But Kara had spent her whole life proving she was more than what people assumed. She didn't need their approval. She just needed them to respect her choice. 1 year later. The apartment was small but filled with light. Kara had helped redesign the layout, moving walls and installing windows that didn't exist before. The rent was manageable now that Samuel had steady work. The walls told their story. Kara's architectural sketches hung next to Poppy's crayon drawings. A photo of Maya on her wedding day sat beside a newer picture. Samuel, Kara, and Poppy at the library, captured by a volunteer during the Saturday reading program. Samuel, still in his work clothes, was crouched by an outlet in the corner, screwdriver in hand. "This place needs more bookshelves," Kara called from the custom height chair she'd designed for herself. "Are you criticizing my work?" "I'm saying we have too many books and not enough places to put them." Poppy, now 7, bounced into the room with a notebook full of designs. "I drew the bookshelf. It's shaped like a castle, with a dragon on top. Can we build it, Daddy, please?" Samuel looked at the elaborate drawing. Turrets, a moat, what appeared to be a functioning drawbridge. "I think that might be a little advanced for me. But Kara can design it, and you can build it. That's how we do things now. That's how we do things now." The matter-of-fact certainty of childhood, spoken like a simple truth. Samuel looked at Kara, who was smiling at Poppy's drawing with something like wonder. "I suppose that is how we do things," she said. Later that night, after Poppy was in bed and the apartment was quiet, Samuel stood in front of the 2 photographs on the shelf. Maya, young and hopeful, on the day she'd promised him forever. And the 3 of them at the library, where everything had started over, not replacing, not erasing, just continuing. Kara came to stand beside him, and he reached down to take her hand. "Thank you," he said. "For what?" "For not letting me run." She squeezed his fingers. "Thank you for deciding to stay." Outside, the city hummed with its usual noise, traffic and distant sirens and the rhythm of ordinary lives. Inside, the apartment held something rarer, not a fairy tale, not a rescue, just 2 people who had looked past each other's wounds and seen something worth fighting for. Sometimes that's enough, sometimes that's everything.